What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Burrow. My name is Jabe Kelly, joined by Richard Pereira and JJ Metz. Got a lot to talk about today. Got a little bit of football to talk about. Got some recap with the Charlotte game from last week and two previews to get through. So this might be a little bit of a longer episode. But gentlemen, how we doing today? Richard, how you doing?
Doing great, Jacob.
All right. And JJ, I know you had a really fun week. You were actually at the Michigan National Championship game. How was that?
I mean, that made the week just a little bit better. I mean, this is probably the worst week I've ever had. FAU losing to FGCU and Charlotte. I mean, I'm super fortunate to get to go and that just made it so much better. But I'm just feeling super down, and I honestly just don't want to leave my house, just stay in bed all day. I mean, I can't do anything. I'm not up for anything. This is one of the worst things that's ever happened. And
did you get to go to Houston for the Final Four game?
Yep.
I know you did, Richard. Did you? Yeah.
I would have went if it was the finals, but it was a Saturday game, so I would have had to fly out during school on Friday.
Well, Rich, I think Richard and I would be very okay with never stepping foot in that stadium ever again after what we had to go through, right?
I give it another thought, but the possibilities maybe slim to none.
I'm good if I never have to step back into the Houston Texans Stadium ever again. It feels like such a long time since FAU played a football game. It's been about a little over a month and a half, and it's crazy to think that the college football schedule just ended. The season just happened, national championship. So before we get into basketball, Richard, you have some updates with what's going on with FAU, with the transfer portal, with some incomings, and with a couple important outgoings.
Yeah, definitely. After what was a brutal 2023 season for the football team, finishing 4-8, 3-5 in conference play. After that, seeing a lot of guys enter the transfer portal with a lot of questions looming over them. The turn of the new year marked a very significant direction for Coach Tom Herman and his coaching staff, and they really got some very big hits from the portal. Since January 5th, they've gotten 7 guys out of the transfer portal, and they are 3-stars and 4-star guys. Starting off with Caleb Coombs coming from Marshall. He'll be joining his fellow teammate from the Thundering Herd, Cam Fancher, who's going to be competing for the starting job at quarterback. And from BYU, Dom Henry, a very talented receiver. He's a 3-star receiver. Will definitely be improving the depth at that position. Wendell Philward, who is a defensive star coming out of Kaiser, who recently won a national championship with the Seahawks. Milan Tucker, a talented special teams player from App State. He's also a 3-star guy. Prince James Boyd, coming from Purdue, a very talented defensive tackle who really helped strengthen up that defensive line for the Owls. Philip Dunham, a 4-star guy who is related to Miami Heat legend Udonis Haslem. He's a 4-star player coming from Indiana. And last but not least, offensive tackle Jacavion Nonar, coming from Maryland. He's a 3-star recruit, and is going to be strengthening. It's going to be boosting, giving a very good boost to that offensive line. I am very excited to see what these guys do for the Owls, with plenty of them joining the Owls this spring, as they'll be working with the team throughout spring camp. And I got to give the coordinators, Charlie Fry and Coach Bellantoni, a lot of credit. They've really done their due diligence in strengthening the positions that really needed improvement, like improving the secondary, improving that with Wendell Philward and Philip Dunham, who is definitely going to play pretty big roles for the Owls, potentially, for the spring, and then heading into fall camp later down the road. And then Charlie Fry for beefing up the receiver room with Caleb Coombs, Dom Henry, and Milan Tucker. It's really going to be very interesting to see how these additions to the team really strengthen the overall depth of this roster and the overall talent pool. The talent pool is looking very good, and I'm very excited to see how they do moving forward.
Yeah, but there's a couple of noteworthy exits that have been brought up. That it's nice to see the reinforcements brought up, but the guys they're replacing are pretty noteworthy for this FAU team.
Yeah, definitely. And the biggest loss FAU took was LaJohntay Wester. He entered the portal a month ago. He took his time getting some interesting offers from the SEC and especially with Auburn, and most notably from many Power Five conferences. But he ultimately ended up deciding to take his talents to the Midwest, heading to Colorado to play for the Buffaloes, to team up with with the Sanders, the coach and the quarterback, Dion and Sheeter. So really wish him the best of luck. He undoubtedly had one of the best seasons ever as an Owl, especially as a receiver. Like I don't think it's gonna take a while before the Owls see a season like that, unless these receivers that I mentioned earlier happen to go off similar to what Lajante did. But yeah, I really wish Lajante the best in his next chapter with Colorado, and we'll see what he does. Maybe he's a special teams mastermind, or he ends up taking the starting job at one of the receiver spots for Colorado.
Yeah, I think Ajante is he's an FAU legend. He was one of the best receivers of all time to wear that FAU jersey. And I wish him the best of luck at Colorado. He's going to ball out. That 1-2 punch with Travis Hunter and with Jonte Wester is going to be really hard to stop. And you have Shadur Sanders throwing you the ball, which, I mean, I think Jonte could be a first-round pick next year. I think he could be a top 15 pick. I think that he's a top 5 receiver in college football.
That's a very bold statement to make. And you look at his stats while he was at FAU, he just continuously got better, made the team around him better. I mean, you look at his freshman year with 114 yards and a single touchdown, all the way to last year with 1168 and 8 touchdowns. For a large portion of the season, led the entire country in catches, was everything for the FAU offense last year that we saw a lot of struggles to find other people get involved, both in the passing game and the running game. So he was everything for this FAU team. And wish him the best of the luck. And he's going to have a really good opportunity out there in Colorado to show his talents. Shadur Sanders at one point was one of the favorites for the Heisman early in the season last year. They're probably going to bolster up that offensive line, so he's going to have an easier time getting the ball out. We saw that team collapse in the second half of the season. He's going to have a lot of eyes on him and a lot of opportunity to increase his draft stock. So it's an interesting additions couple, as well as Casey Thompson, so a few people that are leaving the team. Casey hasn't been quite confirmed yet, but bringing in the quarterback like we have, you assume he's eventually going to find his way out the door somewhere. And now we can roll into basketball. In the last time we spoke, we were talking about the start of the AAC schedule, and that started a little shaky. You win your first game against Eastern Carolina, a game that didn't control for most of the game, pull away at the end, and then the second game last Saturday against Charlotte, falling 70-68. Had a massive second half comeback going into the halftime break, down 15 points. You take the lead with 3 minutes left to go, and ultimately let the game fold away as Charlotte was able to win it with free throws as time was basically expiring. Had an opportunity there at the end to win on a 3-point shot, but did not fall. And now FAU is 11-4 on the season, currently 4th in the AAC. And this is the 4th game, or this is really the 3rd game that FAU's dropped where you can really shake your head. You can look at FGCU, you can look at Bryant, and then you can look at last week against Charlotte. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about both what went wrong in Charlotte. And JJ, I'll give you the floor first. What do you think went wrong with Charlotte? And then what do you think just in general is going off with this FAU basketball team?
So just what's going on in general, slow starts. You're losing at halftime 6 games in a row. St. Bonaventure's, Arizona, FGCU,
5 games.
ECU, like 5 games in a row. So that's definitely just not great. And I think there have to be changes in the starting lineup in general. I think that, obviously Coach May doesn't think that the starting lineup matters that much. But, I think you have to play guys like Vlad Golden and Gene Carlos at the same time to get more size. And I think what's went wrong is you can clearly see FAU is playing down to competition, but they're also playing up. They have great wins. When they play good teams like Arizona, Texas A&M, Butler, Virginia Tech, they win those games. But their ego got pretty high after they were number 7 in the country. Their ego was high, and there's a lot of pressure for them to perform. And sometimes you're just not fired up. And this is the other team's Super Bowl. This is their biggest game of history. This was Charlotte's biggest game in their history. They circled this game forever. This is Charlotte's Super Bowl, and that's going to be a lot of things for other schools as well. I mean, teams are going to be sold out against you because this is their biggest game in the history of their college. They're playing. It was a top 10 FAU team who is in conference play. And, when you go to teams like IGCU as the number 7 team in the country, this is their Super Bowl. This is it for them. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot to play a super good team. And you're going into it thinking it's an easy win. So the difference from being the hunter to the hunted is something. What went wrong against Charlotte? Defense. Charlotte put up 41 points in the first half, and they just exploited this defense. I mean, I would like to see us more aggressive inside the paint, in the interior defense. I think we have to play better defense. It's all about defense. If this FAU team is playing good defense, they are a top 5 team in the country. If they are not, they could be really bad. So fix the defense and get out to better starts, because the teams you're playing, this is their biggest game in school history.
Me and Richard were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and we kind of agreed on a few of these points. To me, what stands out is, I think part of what leads to those deficits at halftime is there's a stiffness that you find this team playing with, that they play so intense, but in the wrong way. I kind of compared it to Josh Allen, and how a lot of people say that every time Josh Allen steps back, he's trying to throw the ball to win the Super Bowl, when you just can't do that in every single play. I feel like every single time they go out there, and it starts a lot in the first half, they're trying to right the wrongs from what happened against San Diego State. They're trying to win, that Final Four game every single time they go down the floor. And you see a little bit of stiffness. You find they don't necessarily know where the shot's going to come from, and find themselves getting the holes early. They go into the halftime break, get readjusted, calm down a little bit, and come out on fire. And another thing you find with teams that are as deep as FAU are, and how there's all this talk about how unselfish the team is and how anybody can find their shot. Well, when it's one particular guy, like in you see with a lot of teams in college basketball, like Arizona with Caleb Love, like while he may not be the most efficient player, that he's going to be willing to step up and take that shot, and he's a vocal leader on that team. We have Janelle Davis, who is certainly our best player on this team, and JJ was giving all the glory before we started going live here, and very well so. But he's not that sort of outspoken guy. Like, he's going to lead by his example on the floor, and lead off the floor in a very similar nature. When you find yourself getting down and you're looking for that one guy to step up, and there kind of makes that confusion on the court. Losing, I think, Michael Forrest, beyond his ability on the floor. Michael Forrest on there was a leader. He represented what FAU was. He was a bridge between, the how FAU was seen for so long as this middling team that no one really thought second of, and then really became part of the heart and soul of this team, leading to that run. While we are able to replace his production, we haven't been quite able to replace his vocal leadership style. We haven't seen that one guy step up in that nature. And it's going to be a tough task now as we get into the core of the AAC schedule, and starting off with the team just behind us in the standings for our third game in AAC is Tulane. We are going to this game 11-4. They've played one less game. They're 10-4, both 1-1 in conference play. Their one loss is to another AAC newcomer in North Texas, a team that we know is very difficult to beat, as they have one of the best defensive teams in the country. And a lot for this Tulane team runs through Kevin Cross, leads the team in almost every statistical category. So, Richard, can you tell us what you know about Kevin Cross and this Tulane team?
Well, Kevin Cross. Vlad Golden's going to be very busy with him for starters. He is averaging 16.2 points a game, 7.8 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's basically the Swiss Army knife of this Tulane team, and it's in a team that is already full of offensive talent. There's a reason that they are one of the best offensive teams in the country. 8th in scoring with nearly 87 points per game, and they're shooting 50.6% from the field, which also ranks 8th in the country. Like, if you're gonna beat Tulane, you got to keep Kevin Cross in check, which Vlad Golden must do, meaning he must be aggressive at all times. I understand that Vlad Golden needs to be careful about fouls. He provides one of the biggest impacts on this team as one of the biggest up and coming big men in all college basketball. He still leads the team in field goal percentage, over 70%, and he's still number 1 in the country in that area. So limiting Kevin Cross is the first step. The second step, limiting all the other scorers who happen to be in the starting lineup. Everybody in Tulane's starting lineup is averaging in double digits, at least over 12 per game. That's the main reason they are one of the best offenses in the country. You gotta get Tulane off to a slow start. Just flip the script. FE has been struggling in the first half. Flip the script to making it so that Tulane's the one struggling in the first half. And like for FEU, it'd be really interesting to see if they make a change to their starting lineup, which I think they will, considering how they've been very off in the first half, as you were talking about, Jacob, with how stiff they were and how they seem to be trying a little too hard. I understand, like, you're trying to play at the level you were in the Final Four, but there are times when playing in the Final Four every game, it causes you to make some mistakes that you'd rather have back. So, like, for starters, in the past 4 games for FEU since that Arizona game, they are averaging over 30 points on 42.5% shooting from the field and 23.3% from 3 in the first half. It's completely different when they turn it up in the second half. They're averaging over 41.5 points to be exact, on 48.3% shooting from the field and 39% from downtown. If they can figure out the perfect formula to play much better in the first half and make it similar to how they play in the second half, this FEU team should be on route to victory over Tulane, as long as they play very good defense against Tulane starters and keeping Kevin Cross in check, denying him the ball, and just disrupting his rhythm. Keep him out of rhythm, and you have a good edge on Tulane.
It's going to be a very interesting defensive matchup for this FAU team, as Tulane doesn't run with a true center. Kevin Cross is one of the guys of size. He's at 6'8", but only 225 pounds, so he doesn't have a lot of weight and height that he throws around. But there's so much scoring to go around with this Tulane team. Like you mentioned, Richard, you got 16.2, 15.1, 14.4, 14.2, and 12.9, all in your starting lineup. So JJ, we've talked about how we do probably need to mess around a little bit with this starting lineup. And there's going to be a lot of points needed to be asked about some guys other than Janelle Davis. What do you think would be the best starting lineup to combat this Tulane team? And who do you think we need to see step up on the offensive end of the floor?
Okay, I'm going to give you my starting lineup for this game. Tulane is a small team, as Richard mentioned. Kevin Cross is their big man, as you mentioned, Jacob, but he's only 6'8", and they don't have a true center until someone like Percy Daniels, who's getting under 10 minutes a game. So I think that we have to play a really, really big, very, very big in the starting lineup. Here's my starting lineup. Starting off with the guards, you're going to have John O. Davis and Jalen Gaffney. Those are your 2 guards you're going to start. I'm going to play a very big lineup. You're going to have Vlad Golden, Giancarlo Rosado, and Brennan Lorient. Brennan Lorient is the key guy for this FAU team. You are going to have John O. Davis, Jalen Gaffney, your 2 best guards, and then you're going to have 3 pretty big men. Brennan Lorient hasn't got much action, but he is super good inside the paint. He can block shots really well. He's like the second highest recruit in FAU history. We haven't seen too much of him. His athleticism is so good. Like, give him the ball, he could be one of the better players on this team. Brennan Lorient, Vlad Golden, Giancarlo Rosado. I honestly think you can sub out Rosado and put Carroll in, but right now I like Brennan Lorient Vlad Golden, Giancarlo Sato, and then your two best guards in Jalen Gaffney and Janelle Davis.
I have no idea how that would defensively match up against a 3 guard and 2 forward lineup, which the 2 forwards are 6'6" and 6'8". But I mean, that is a tactic. You could just go the complete opposite route of what you're playing against, but I can't imagine how a man-to-man defense would work with that. We have quick guards. I mean, you have Colby King, who's under 200 pounds. He's their second leading scorer on the team with 15 points per game. They also shoot pretty well from the outside. Kevin Cross, while he can, gets a lot of work inside, 36% from outside. Colby King, 39.3 from outside, 43.4 for Sion James. So this is a quick team. This is a team that also can spread the floor really well. So I'm not sure how going big would do that. Before you given what you're about to say, I think going the complete opposite. Actually, I think we've seen the last few games, or I think just the last 2 games, where they've gone with a 3 guard, 2 forward set with Rosado and Vlad getting the start. I don't think we've seen the production out of Giancarlo Rosado that could really justify him being in the starting rotation. You're looking at 7.5 points per game. He's currently 4th on the team in rebounding. He doesn't quite give you that stretch the floor ability from your big spot. He can hit like a 15-foot jumper, but he's not going to spread the floor like one of your other guards would. So I would go actually the complete opposite of that. I would go with Gaffney running the true point, with Elijah, with Janelle. I think I'd like to see not Brandon Weatherspoon, Nick Boyd get a little bit more involved. He's been ramping up his minutes since he's come back from injury. Trust him with that starting spot in the rotation, and then go from there and sub in with whoever is the hot hand, and then obviously going with Vlad Golden as the center.
Yeah, so obviously, as you mentioned, Tulane does have 2 forwards in Holloway, in Cross, and 3 guards in James, Kings, and Verbs. Now, you could play one other way, which I think might actually be better, which is with Brennan Orient, Vlad Golden, Brandon Weatherspoon, Janelle Davis, and either Trey Carroll or Jalen Gaffney. I would put Gaffney in. I think you play 3 guards maybe. I think you might, to match up man to man against Tulane. I think you're going to want to play Gaffney, Janelle Davis, Brandon Weatherspoon. You need perimeter shooting, and that is what Brandon Weatherspoon brings. He is better than Elijah, in my opinion, at perimeter shooting. I can't really trust Elijah with the ball right now at this point, but he's so good when he's on. I'm just not confident at this very moment. And that's why I would put Brandon Weatherspoon over Elijah Martin. Giancarlo Sato kind of clogs the middle up a little bit. And, you want more perimeter shooting. That's why I would put Brandon Weatherspoon in. But you have to start Laurie. You have to start Laurie. You have to give him a chance. I think he's the second best player on this FAU team if he, gets some time playing.
Well, 2 parts for me. First part about the potential starting 5. I would still keep Davis and Gaffney together, a 1 for scoring and 1 for playmaking, to keep that balance in. Golden stays as a guaranteed starter. I'm pretty sure just feeding the ball early on to start the game is very important, especially against this Tulane team that is relatively small, with their tallest important guy being 6'8" in Kevin Cross. And when it comes to the 2 guys, I would still start Martin. I'm willing to give another chance. But if it's still struggling, I think you would make the hot decision, the hot take, to have him come off the bench and be a spark plug, which I think this team really needs. I think this team really needs a spark plug off the bench. Like they were one of the best scoring, they had one of the best scoring benches in the country last year for a reason, which was mainly thanks to Janelle Davis and Elijah Martin. And for this year, it hasn't really been the same, but that's mainly because of Davis and Martin getting all the starts, and of course Golden is stepping up with how he's played so far this season. I would still start Martin, and then one thing you are right about, JJ, I do want to see them start Brendan Lorian.
Yeah.
On the wing, on the perimeter, I really like it. His flaws on the offensive side of the ball concerning. His free throws is off for the most part. Like he's shooting just over 50%, and his 3 balls not is not that streaky. Is streaky. He's like he knocks down the occasional 3-pointer, but the defense he provides on the wing, on the perimeter, he's very athletic. He's very lengthy, and that's something I really like about him. And I think he would be a great matchup for this Tulane team that is very perimeter oriented, with three guys having 77 of the team's 106 made 3-pointers, and those three guys are Kobe King, Sion James, and Jalen Forbes. You keep those guys in check on the perimeter, and I think Brandon Lloyd would be a good matchup to start heading into Thursday night.
Yeah, and Brendan Laurier is someone where I agree with you. I think he has to be in the starting lineup because before your last 3 games, he was playing good amount of minutes. He had 12 minutes versus St. Bonaventures, 17 versus FIU, 13 for Virginia Tech, 15 versus Eastern Michigan, and when the last 3 games, he's had 3 minutes against FGCU and 2 minutes against Charlotte. And that's why they lost. And I think all 3 of us can agree we need a change. I understand you want to put Nick Boyd in, and I love Nick Boyd, but Nick Boyd played that Charlotte game. Like, it really doesn't matter who starts as long as you have the same lineup at the same time. Laurier isn't getting enough minutes. So as long as he plays 20 plus minutes in this game, which he deserves every game, I'm fine. I think Laurier the sky's the limit for him. He's very streaky with the 3 ball, but in clutch moments, he had those 2 free throws against Arizona. He banked those both down, and when he's on, he can bring a huge amount of talent, and he can get this team going with confidence. So you need Brendan Laurier in at least 20 minutes a game. He should be playing the 3rd or 4th most minutes on this team.
Slight correction, and Laurier's shooting 38% from the free throw line. Gotta work on that more, and 2 of 10 from 3, 20%. So he's knocking his occasional 3-pointer and making an occasional free throw here and there, but it's pretty clear his offensive talent is currently raw at the moment, but his defensive talent, it's definitely there, which I think is very important to play as many minutes as possible against Tulane.
And like I said, his 3-point shooting is very streaky. Yeah. I didn't say he's what percentage. And then I just said that he knocked down 2 huge free throws in clutch moments versus Arizona. I mean, he definitely has to improve on both of those things. But, going back to what I said, I mean, those are important things. He's super good in clutch time, and he makes very big threes. And he deserves 20 plus minutes per game. And, he doesn't have great percentages, but you have to give him a chance. He's not getting very many minutes, and he deserves more. And I feel bad for him so far this season.
Yeah, he definitely needs to increase role. I'm not sure if he's going to find it in the starting lineup like you guys are suggesting. Actually, Richard, you did talk me out of taking Elijah out of the starting lineup. I think, and also, JJ, what you were saying about Brandon Weatherspoon, I think I'd actually take out Elijah, put in Brandon Weatherspoon for that shot-making ability beyond the perimeter. I mean, you look at Elijah on the season, he's the last in the team in field goal percentage, so you don't get that reliability out of the gate, and maybe that can light a fire underneath him that we saw a lot from last season. We got one more preview to go through, so before we get there, I'll give you guys our score predictions, starting off with Richard.
Like I said, you got to shut down that perimeter offense of Tulane, especially those 3 guys, and Kobe King, Sion James, Jalen Forbes. 77 of the team's 106 made 3-pointers. That's over 3/4 of the number of threes, nearly 3/4 of the threes that Tulane has made. Keeping those guys off the perimeter, denying them the ball is very crucial. Vlad Golden boxing out Kevin Cross in the on the boards, bowing him down low in the post. That is important, and most important of all, playing good in the first half. As long as you play good in the first half, FEU should be able to get this game. It's going to be very competitive. Tulane has a great offense and a respectable defense. Their main weakness is rebounding. They grab 33 rebounds a game while their opponents grab over 38. So that's an area that FEU must take advantage of with their sides, with Vlad Golden, Giancarlo Rosado, Janelle Davis, since he loves crashing the glass as well. I would go for a close game of FEU 83 to Tulane 77.
JJ, I can tell you're a little less confident in this FAU team compared to where you were or on the season. Do you think this is going to be a bounce back game, or do you think it's going to be a game that FAU still continues to struggle?
I'm really torn because I thought the bounce back game was Charlotte and ECU, and we came out slow in those games. However, Tulane is a very tough team to beat, and you're on the road against them. And as much as I want Coach May to make a change, which is needed, I don't think he will. And we are going to start out very slow. We are going to be down more than 10 points at halftime. And I'm going to be worried. This whole FAU fan base is going to be worried. And FAU is going to struggle in the second half. But I think there is a game winner from Janelle Davis, and the Owls win 79-77. And after this game, there will be clear lineup changes. And I'm telling you, we're going to have Lorient starting Sunday. We need that. That's all that matters so far.
I think this can actually be the bounce back game. Something that I'm not sure who it was, might have been both you guys said earlier that FAU, I think it actually was JJ that said that we play up to our competition, we play down to our competition. Tulane is definitely the better of the three schools that we have played up to this point in the AAC. And they're going to have to score a lot, FAU is, to try to keep up with this Tulane team. So I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a high scoring game in both halves. I can see both teams being around the 50 mark. I can see like a 45 to 41 game going into halftime one way or another. And then carrying on into the second half, a lot of scoring similar to what we saw in the Arizona game. I'm going to go with this being FAU's bounce back game, pulling away kind of similar to how we did against ECU, but with a higher scoring margin, or not scoring margin, but higher scoring between both teams. I'm going to go with FAU winning 89-83 over Tulane. And then another game, one more game here to talk about. This game going to be at home on Sunday versus one of the teams that we came over in the AAC from the Conference USA last year, a team that FAU is very familiar with, although a team that looks very different from how they did last year in the scoring department, that being UAB. Most notably, Jelly Jordan Walker is no longer with the team as he's in the Dallas Mavericks farm system now. And at times, UAB has really struggled to find their scoring so far this year. With not having that go-to reliable score. Only 3 guys so far this season above 10 points per game, notably Eric Gaines being their second leading scorer. I think it was their second leading scorer from last year, leading scorer this year with 12.4 points per game. So Richard, compared to what we saw last year from this UAB team, how fierce of a matchup is this for FAU?
Unfortunately, not as fierce as last year. UAB, had a great season. Last season, had a great campaign last season, going to the conference tournament championship before losing to FAU, then qualifying for the NIT where they reached the championship game, competed against a fellow CSA team, now currently in the American with North Texas, who ended up winning the whole thing. This UAB team is not the same as they were last year. They have a 10-5 record, 2-0, which is not bad by any means. By any means necessary. They've done good considering what happened to them, a lot of changes. And they recently got the rhythm back with 6 straight wins. So they're starting to get their mojo back after a rough start in non-conference play. And Eric Gaines, Yaxo Lenborg, and Javian Davis, they're 3 guys scoring in double digits. Everybody else is 10 and under. You just got to figure out a way to prevent Gaines from, you got to contest his shots at all times. Like he's taking the most shots, even though he's shooting them at such high volume, it's ended up affecting his efficiency in a negative way. He's shooting under 40% from the field. So, and he's played the most minutes out of anybody. So you just got to figure out a way to prevent him from getting the ball and just creating opportunities for his fellow teammates. And that way you would be able to pull out a pretty convincing win because their defense is not that great. They're allowing nearly 76 a game, nearly offsetting the 77 points they scored themselves. So their flawed defense is something FAU should exploit heading to Sunday afternoon.
This is a team that's comparable to both FAU and Tulane. Comparable to Tulane in terms of their roster construction. They have a very small lineup relative to how a lot of college programs are built, especially compared to having Vlad Golden in the starting lineup. for FAU, and they're comparable to FAU in the sense that they've struggled with some teams that they shouldn't struggle against. They've lost to McNeese. They've lost to Arkansas State. They had some very close games this year with Drake, with UNC Asheville, with USF, UTSA, some teams that aren't going to be competing much in the AAC. And even earlier in the season, getting only a 1-point win against Middle Tennessee State. Alcorn State only beating by 3 points. Lost to Bradley the first game of the season. So they've had a very shaky season, and to even be 10-5 and second in the conference, it's a pretty good position for them to be in. So JJ, how do you like our chances going against this team? Do you think that we're going to play down to their level, or do you think that this is a game that you can see FAU controlling given the struggles they've had this year?
Keep in mind, this is a home game, JJ.
Yeah, this is the red out game for FAU.
We're red.
So we're red. Yeah, we're red. We're red to the game. You got you
I'm wearing
can't
an
lose
FAU
this
shirt
game.
at least.
Yeah.
This I think FAU plays up. I think they definitely play up versus UAB because UAB is a good team who is 10-5 while they play FAU. And this is at 12 o'clock. This is an early Sunday game. So obviously a bunch of kids out of school will be at the game. It'll be a pretty stacked crowd. I expect to sell out for the game. It really just depends because if we lose to Tulane, which I think we could, we can beat this team by 40. And because we probably will, because I'm not joking, because probably what's gonna happen is if we lose, we're gonna really be hungry. But I think we're gonna find a way to win this one too. So I think we're gonna find a way to win versus Tulane. So I feel like we're gonna play up to competition. Both teams are gonna be playing well. I think Gaines is the guy you have to stop. He had an outstanding game last year versus FAU when it was in UAB, and the Blazers ended up beating the number 19th ranked FAU Owls at the time. Jacob, I believe you called this game on ESPN Plus, so you're very experienced with this team. Obviously, in that 4-point win, where we really came back from a good second half. Jordan Jelly Walker was obviously one of the better players in the AAC at that point, but we'll play up to competition.
Yeah, that was a very exciting game last year, and one of the games that I was fortunate enough to be on ESPN for. That was a very fun experience being on ESPN Plus, commentating 2 games for the women's, 2 games for the men's team. And it was a thrilling matchup because you knew they had that one guy that could score any sort of shot. Jordan Walker is a little undersized. He's like 5'10", 5'11", but he's quick. He has every sort of shot in his bag. He can hit step backs, hit from beyond the perimeter, can get to the basket. And we saw that on full display last year as he nearly single-handedly won the game for UAB. It was a back-and-forth game that most of the time FAU had the lead in. But this time around, you're not getting that explosion. You're not getting that one guy from UAB that can really take over. Eric Gaines is still a very solid player. And himself, he kind of got overshadowed last year being behind Jordan Walker, but he hasn't really stepped up. He's going to get a lot of his points from inside. He likes to drive in. Is abysmal from beyond the 3-point line, 23.4% from beyond deep. So if you can keep him on the perimeter, do stuff like switching on the screens, which we know every time a guard gets a screen set on them, FAU likes to switch off anyways. So I think it's actually a really good matchup for FAU to be coming against this UAB team. If we do fall to Tulane, it's going to be a battle of just which team feels worse about themselves. Both teams will have solid records. FAU will be 11-5. They're going to be 10-5. But neither team at this point in the season would really feel great. Even if we do beat Tulane, we don't feel amazing. We'd feel okay. We'd feel solid. You can't really be upset after winning a game too much. But both teams have found themselves let down at certain points in the season. So both teams will try to look at this game as kind of a springboard for the rest of the season. So with that, this has been a very long episode so far, about 40 minutes in. For once, JJ, actually, I'm going to give you the floor first. How do you think this UAB game is going to go? Give us your predictions, sir.
79-74 FAU.
All right. Pretty cutthroat. Simple as. Richard.
When it comes down to it, UAB has a case of bipolar disorder. One moment they're losing a consecutive number of games, and then the next they're winning a consecutive number of games. They start the season losing 2 straight, then they go on a 4-game winning streak. Then they lose 3 straight. Now they're on a 6-game winning streak. For starters, I think that 6-game winning streak ends on Sunday against FAU. They are inconsistent shooting the 3-ball. They give up a lot of threes against their opponents, and their offense is inconsistent to the point where it would resemble somewhat of what happened against ECU, where you have a couple of guys who are able to score in double digits, but they're not like scoring in high volume, which presents a vulnerability that FU should expose, and I think they run away with it by in double digits. I would say FEU 75 to 61 UAB.
UAB is currently second in the conference. They're 2-0 in conference. They're 10-5 on their schedule, but I think they've truly had a terrible start to their season, which, highlighted by some of the games that I mentioned, losing to Bradley, losing to Southern Miss, losing to Arkansas State, having close games against Drake, UNC Asheville. So they're currently number 2 in the conference. I think they're going to lose 6 out of their next 8 games. They have a very rough schedule with this game against FAU, and then their next few games. They have us down here in Boca Raton, Tulane, East Carolina, Charlotte. They could probably beat those 2 teams. Then 13th ranked Memphis, North Texas, SMU, and then FAU again. So I think they're going to have a really rude awakening for this next stretch of games that starts on Sunday against FAU. I think that we're just going to pummel drive them. I'll play the JJ role. We kind of switch roles right here. I think we're going to curb stop smash them. I think we're going to destroy this UAB team. I can see an 80-55 type game where you shut down Eric Gaines. They struggle to find scoring. And this is a team that does not feel really great about themselves right now. And I can't see their AAC standing stay like this much longer, staying in the top 3 like they are. I think they're going to plummet down the standings and really be introduced to some difficult teams in this AAC schedule. But that is it for us here today. It's been a very long recording relative to what we're used to doing. We appreciate y'all watching and tuning in. If you like more FAU content, please hit that subscribe button down below and head over to FAUowlsnest.com where you can see some written work from these 2 gentlemen, one to my side and one below me. And let us know down below in the comments what you think about both how things have been going for the football team in the transfer portal, bringing in some recruits, the outgoings. Let us know your thoughts about losing LaJohntay Wester. Let us know your thoughts about how this team has struggled so far this season. What do you think that we should do differently? And then the 2 games, let us know how you think the Tulane game is going to go, as well as the UAB game is going to go. But for that is all for us today. Jacob, JJ, and Richard, we appreciate y'all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go Owls.
Go Owls and wear red on Sunday.